Okay, so you know that modern life is about continuous divided attention, right? You've heard that. So when Dr. Zaiane starts, all eyes will be on him. But for the moment, we have the microphone for the amateur camera on the dog, and the professional camera is on me. And some of you will probably be a bit distracted by the dog too, but that's good. He's an honored guest for today, so he's part of the experience. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today is the first lecture on Promise and Perils of AI by Osmar Zaiane, and I'm just going to give a brief intro. Now, the subject of today may just seem to you like just another subject in the course, but it is actually maybe the most important subject in the course. The technological singularity is crucially dependent upon AI developments, and possibly unfriendly AI is the greatest existential risk out there. AI is very important to the singularity, but that does not mean that all AI researchers believe in the singularity. It doesn't naturally follow that all AI researchers are believers in the singularity. Some are, some aren't. You can read about AI in books, but I think the experience of the Sony Aibo robotic dog makes it a bit more tangible. And you can just speculate and fantasize a bit. This dog, the last production run was in October 2005. And so you can imagine if this had continued to evolve for another 7.5 or 8 years, what it would be capable of now. It's actually quite remarkable what it is able to do. It has very natural conversations which seem to be different every time. It never says anything unkind. It's like a perfect friend. It always says nice things to you. Asks you if you're tired at the end of the day. It tells you that it loves you. You know, I mean, all the things that you'd like from a perfect friend. So it's interesting how un-Canadian this is. That ordinary consumers in Canada did not buy this product. It was popular among AI researchers, but ordinary Canadians like yourself seemed to shun it. And although I got my first Aibo here, by the time this model came out, the Sony stores in Canada weren't selling it because nobody was buying it. So in order for me to get this, I had to fly to the US. You know, there are these buying around rules. You cannot buy a Sony US product in Canada. You have to buy it from Sony Canada. And if Sony Canada doesn't have the product you want, you're sunk. There's no solution except doing what I did. So I flew to a hotel in the United States, waited until this package addressed to me at the hotel arrived, and flew back to Canada. So that was how I was able to get this. And it arrives with all sorts of fraud warnings that if the recipient is not there, send it back to Sony. Don't forward it. So it was really quite exciting to get it in that way. But there didn't seem to be much of a market amongst Canadians. Who is this for, really? It may seem to you like a child's toy, but it's not. It's definitely not. The ears and tail come off very easily. In the hands of a child, it strips off the ears and tail. The thing looks very stupid then. And so it's really a toy for adults. And what kind of adults? Well, affluent young women, particularly, I guess, in Europe and the United States and Japan. That's where it's sold. And even when there was a man buying it, he was usually buying it for the woman in his life. So the main market seemed to be affluent young women. And if you think about robots in general, there are some regional differences in the world. In our part of the world, the main funding for robotics is military. And so there are a lot of military applications being researched, particularly in the US. In Asia, the main emphasis is on the elderly and household tasks. So the most useful robots for you will obviously come from Asia sometime soon. Robots that can take care of the elderly, that can pick up your home, that do all sorts of useful things, but those will come from Asia, not from the North American continent. You may know that the movie Blade Runner, that was set supposedly in 2019. Well, this is 2013. We're not that far from 2019. But it's important to understand what Blade Runner was about. Was it about things that are silicon and software and hardware based like this? No. It was about genetic engineering. So replicants were produced by genetic engineering. They were biology-based, flesh and blood beings. So they were not robots. They were not silicon and circuit boards in that 1982 movie that's a part of everybody's consciousness in this area. And they're very different, therefore, from the robots in the movie AI, which were robots, were silicon-based, and like Ivo here. So that's all I have to say today. I'm looking forward very much to Dr. Zaiane's lecture, as I'm sure you are. Now what we're going to do is take the microphone from the dog and give it to Dr. Zaiane, so all eyes will be on Dr. Zaiane. Okay.
So Dr. Solez mentioned the fact that not all AI people believe in the singularity. I'm not among those who don't believe completely. I believe in the singularity, but I'm not as optimistic that it'll happen tomorrow. It'll happen eventually. So I'm a computer scientist. I'm actually specializing in data mining and machine learning, and I'll talk about those in the context of these lectures. I've been involved with computers for more than 30 years, so in the beginning of the 80s. So I've seen computers evolve. I've seen computing evolve. Computers used to be way bigger. They're getting smaller and smaller, and their capacity is getting bigger and bigger. So I've seen how they evolved. As an example, my wristwatch has a computer, like many watches. And this computer is relatively sophisticated because it actually counts the strokes I make when I swim. So it has a sensor and it has an accelerometer, like a phone, for example, to know when I'm pushing the wall and things like that. What I can tell you, this computer is way more sophisticated than the onboard computer of Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. These are spacecrafts that NASA sent to study the outer limit of the solar system. Voyager 1 was, well, NASA announced in June last year that Voyager 1 is about to leave the solar system. It's the first man-made craft that is leaving the solar system. Well, this computer is more sophisticated than that computer. It's very difficult to imagine, but it is a fact. Those spacecrafts were sent in 1977, I believe. Anyways, I not only seen the computers evolve, but I witnessed also how computing evolved. And I can, well, nobody can predict the future, but I can have an idea about how it will continue to evolve. It's not really an exponential curve like many people are saying. It may be quadratic, but it's growing fast. Okay, so again, I'm not as skeptical, but I'm more cautious before I say it'll happen tomorrow. So this is what I'll be talking about. I'm dividing my lectures in different pieces, and I'm known to talk too much. So I'll be careful to leave you some room for questions at the end. Today I'll give you an introduction, a general introduction, and later on I'll talk more in details about what is artificial intelligence. So often we use the term artificial intelligence, but we don't necessarily know what it means. Some ideas come from movies, some ideas come from comic books, you name it. But we don't really know what it means, and we'll attempt to define it. And then I'll talk about expert systems. Expert systems are very important. They're part of AI, and they're very close with medicine because they developed in the context of building systems for medicine. And then I'll talk about machine learning and data mining, so my field. And at the end, we'll focus more on applications, concrete applications, examples, and see whether, this machine learning, data mining, artificial intelligence, is it real or is it fiction? And if it's real, what does it give us as humans and as a society? And then are there risks? We'll talk about the risks. Okay, so the risks and potential of AI in general. Okay, so let's start with some fun here. Can we program machines to think? That's the question. It's not new. People have been talking about this for many years. Actually, for more than 2 centuries. Even beyond that. The Greeks already created this term automata, which is a self-moving kind of machine. And they built these machines. And then, century after century, people build these machines that can be programmed and do sophisticated things. And actually, in the 18th century, it was entertainment to build a machine like that and show it in the court in front of the rich people. So here I'll give you an example. The Turk. This is the most famous automaton in the history of automatons. I'll tell you why. So in 1769, or maybe the year before, a civil servant, a Hungarian civil servant, was summoned by the Empress of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Maria Theresa. And he went to Vienna and they had a discussion about building something new. Okay? We don't know exactly what the discussion was, whether she asked for a particular machine, but later on he created this machine and he brought it. What is this machine? It's a machine that has an orientally dressed automaton, actually dressed as a Turk. That's why they call it the Turk. And this Turk was supposedly playing chess, and he could beat anybody. And people tried it, and indeed that automaton was beating everybody. It's an interesting machine because it has some mechanics here. It had some background music, and the automaton was moving the pieces, and seeing apparently what are the movements that you did, and then responded. Well, now we know, after knowing all the history of what happened there, but also how computers are playing chess. I mean, it took until we built Deep Blue to beat the masters, which happened recently. Well, today, chess games on smartphones can beat anybody, can beat me. But certainly not in 1772, 1769. So it was a hoax. What happened actually is that inside this machine, there was one part that was mechanical, that was playing music, and another part was empty space, and a master chess player was hiding inside, and he could see from holes the movements, and with some mechanical devices he was able to operate the automaton, and the automaton was grabbing these pieces and moving them. It was impressive, of course. Nobody knew that a human being was hiding inside. But that automaton was amazingly famous for more than half a century, and it traveled to Russia, it traveled even to America, and many people were really mesmerized by this, even though they knew it was a hoax after a while. But what is important that it sparked the debate about what it means to have a machine that thinks. Okay. So here are other examples of automaton. This is the Scribe. It was built in 1772, so more or less at the same time. As I told you, it was a fashion at that time to build these. It was entertaining to different kings and rich people. This was created by Pierre-Jacques Droz. So Pierre-Jacques Droz, he's a Swiss clockmaker. Clocks were very sophisticated. I mean, it was also an automated machine. You remember the cuckoo, you have this house, and you have a door that opens and a cuckoo coming out as many times as the hour, so 3 times, 4 times. And so yeah, and sometimes you had a carousel turning and musicians playing. It was very sophisticated. So this guy, who was the inventor of the wrist watch, actually, in the 1800s, he invented this Scribe. So this is a humanoid sitting and can write letters. It has a disk in the back, and the disk has different pegs, and you can program it, you can change the disk, and it can write different letters from different languages. You can change the language. It was amazingly sophisticated. Actually, it moved the legs, it moved the head and the eyes, even the chest. You can see it like breathing. I mean, for that time, it is amazingly sophisticated. This Scribe still exists. It's in Neuchâtel in Switzerland at the museum, and it's still working. By the way, you can go online and see videos how it works. I have also, if you click here, I hope it'll come. There's a web page. This machine cannot download information. I don't know why. It should go to a web page where they show you the machine has been rebuilt in our time and demonstrated in many places. We show how you can operate the automaton and so forth. The reality is that, so I was asking, can we program machines to think? This is a programming. The Scribe is a programmable machine. You can program it to move and write in different languages. But the problem is that while we can't program everything that we know in a machine, we still don't know what it means to think. How do we think? We don't know. So if we don't know it, we have different hypotheses. But if we don't know it concretely, how do we program it? It's a very interesting question. I'll get back to that when we talk about intelligence. Do you remember this phone? Maybe some of you will remember. This is called the Brick. First cell phone commercially available by Motorola came in March 1983. It was called the Brick because it was 2 pounds heavy, very heavy. That's a cell phone. It's like a shoebox, walking with a shoebox, a heavy shoebox. Do you have an idea how much it cost in 1983? You'll be surprised. $4,000. You have to be rich to buy it and justify why you're buying this. Well, the cell phone evolved quite a bit. I witnessed, again, like computers, I witnessed this evolution. We came a long way. And we're talking about 30 years. From the brick to, even these are obsolete now. We're talking about smartphones. Smartphones like many of us have in our pockets. And we wonder, how did previous guys live without these phones? We can't live without them. We do everything with them. I can play chess with this, and it beats me by far. But I can do other things. Let's look at devices for medicine. I have here an application that can check my pulse. Okay? I don't know if you've seen these before, but they exist. This is the free one. There are more sophisticated ones that you have to pay for them. And there are many anecdotes where people use these toys and actually detected cardiac arrhythmia in their friends or kids or whatever, so they have been useful. It's not really just a toy. Some of these medical devices within smartphones are approved by the FDA. So here's another example. You can attach to your cell phone some extensions, and now you have an ultrasound machine. Okay? So these smartphones are not just phones you use to communicate like that brick. You can do many more things. You can program to do many things. By the way, these small cell phones, some of them are more powerful than laptops or desktops. Okay? Here's another example. Now you plug something else, boom, you have another device, and you have a blood pressure measuring cuff. This has been approved by the FDA, by the way. Here's another example. These are all extensions you can add to your phone, and then suddenly you can do an eye exam. And it gives you a very sophisticated report about all possible issues with the eye. Here's another one. You add yet another device, and then now you can do diagnostic for ear infections. Doesn't end there. Here's another one. I linked this particular application. This was one of the principal investigators in my center, Alberta Innovate Center for Machine Learning. Unfortunately, we lost him to the Mayo Clinic. But in collaboration with the Calgary Scientific, so it's a company in Calgary, they developed this CT scan viewer. And as I said, it is now approved by the FDA. A doctor remotely can do the diagnostic by looking at this 3D CT scan on the phone. And it's a very high resolution. Here's another example close to us. This is from UBC. You can have a pulse oximetry by adding just some more connections to your phone. This is using a normal smartphone. Okay. Here's another application where doctors from afar can help other surgeons do surgery just by looking at the phone. Okay. In this particular case, they're doing teleconsultation for surgery on the jaw, and it's also 3D. Well, this is maybe not that impressive because your generation probably, and the previous generation, we saw Star Trek, and we are familiar with the tricorder. Who doesn't know the tricorder? Well, the tricorder was very sophisticated, hypothetical device that doctors were using, and also administering some treatments like with radiation therapy, but also scouts going outside could use it to detect whether there are some chemicals in the air or something like that. You've seen Star Trek. Well, these tricorders exist. This is from NASA. A scientist at NASA created a tricorder to detect toxic chemicals in the air. This is from the NASA website. So next time when you see somebody with a smartphone going around and looking here, he or she is not necessarily looking for hotspots for Wi-Fi. They're probably looking for these chemicals. Who knows? Maybe they have a tricorder. Well, the ultimate cell phone, according to me, is this one. Who has seen this phone? Nobody? Oh my. This is the Pomegranate phone. And it's made in Canada and Nova Scotia. So I'm surprised that nobody heard of it because it's from Canada. But I'm delighted at the same time because I'm going to show you this phone. And this is important that I go to the website. I hope that the network works. Before it didn't work. I need to authenticate, that's why. So I apologize, I'll stop for a few seconds. I have to authenticate. I think it's here. Authenticate. Everybody will watch me put my password. What is it again? Okay, so now I'm connected. Now I'm going back to my presentation. And let's see this ultimate smartphone. Do we have sound? Okay. Sound is important. Oh, yes, we do. Okay. So let's explore.
Welcome to the Pomegranate, the one device that puts more things in the palm of your hand than you ever thought possible. Phone, email, full internet browsing, built-in camera, video, MP3 player, GPS navigation. And that's just the beginning. Explore the Pomegranate and see what sets it apart from everything else.
Doesn't seem impressive yet, eh? All these things that smartphones do already. But look at that.
The Pomegranate's built-in projector can play anything in vivid widescreen format. Simply point the screen and it projects. What would you like to project?
I'll take a business presentation.
The Pomegranate takes meetings to a whole new level. It projects your presentation up to a 72-inch screen size.
Impressed?
Would you like to see another feature?
You want to see more
or have
features?
you seen everything you want?
We'll keep exploring.
Instantly speak any language you choose with the global voice translator. Just talk into the front of the Pomegranate, and the language of your choice is spoken from the speaker in the rear. Go ahead, give it a try. Click on the letters GVT. The global voice translator includes 50 languages, so you can communicate in virtually any country in the world.
How's the project going?
برنامه چجوری داره میره جلو؟
زبان فارسی رو خیلی خوب صحبت میکنید.
Your Farsi is very good.
Thank you.
متشکرم.
Do you want to split some garlic fingers?
میخواین نون با پنیر و سیر قسمت بکنید؟
به نظر من ایده خیلی خوب هست. من خیلی خوشم میاد ازشون.
You betcha.
Waiter. How was your trip?
سفارتون چجور بود؟
With the global voice translator, language is never a barrier.
Convinced?
Would you like to see another feature?
Want to see more
Or
features?
have you seen everything you want?
We'll see.
A fresh cup of coffee from your smartphone. Yes, it's finally possible. Just insert one of our single brew packets, and the Pomegranate takes it from there. Choose a flavor. The Pomegranate comes with a special holder for convenient hands-free coffee making. Total brew time is 30 seconds. It's the ultimate in mobile coffee making.
Told you, the ultimate phone.
Hazelnut. Good choice. Would you like to see another feature? Or have you seen everything you want?
Okay, this is even better.
An electric razor that's built right into your smartphone. Once you start using it, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. The pomegranate eliminates the need for a separate shaver. And since it's always with you, you can shave whenever you want. If you're really in a rush, you can even talk and shave at the same time.
Hey, I'm just on my way.
I'm leaving the office now.
All right, I'll meet you in the lobby.
Would you like to see another feature? Or have you
it
seen
goes
everything you
beyond
want?
that. So let's say we've seen enough. Do you want to see more? Yes, people are saying yes. Well, we'll see the last one then.
The pomegranate isn't just about work, it's also about fun. And what's more fun than a phone you can play? Just when the day is starting to drag, break out the pomegranate harmonica. You can play along with preset beats, or go freestyle. No other phone in the world plays like the pomegranate.
So now you want to see the release date for sure. Well, this
Would you like to
is
see another feature? Or have you seen everything you want?
this is the modern Turk. Basically, it's a hoax, obviously, and it's an initiative from the Nova Scotia government to create like a buzz like this, and people click on it, and then at the end they see this.
Having everything you want in a phone may be a stretch, but a place that has everything definitely exists.
It's a
Take a
wonderful
moment to
idea.
learn about Nova
I wish
Scotia.
the
You might be
government of
surprised
Alberta
at
had
just
this
how
idea
much
before.
one place can offer.
They didn't. Anyways, so that's the hoax, like the Turk, but it was done for fun. It wasn't really to pretend that it's a phone. I love this example. I wanted to share it with you. So what is singularity? Dr. Solez talked about singularity on Thursday, and I said that, Dr. Solez mentioned the fact that some AI specialists actually are skeptical and they say, nah, it will not happen. They don't believe in it. And I said, in my point of view, it will eventually happen, but I may not see it. So what is it exactly? It's not new. The concept comes from other fields, like in math, singularity has a meaning. So it's a point at which there's no derivatives. You cannot do a derivation, but in the neighborhood there are points where you can do a derivative, exactly at that point. And that it has a meaning also in astrophysics. And in astrophysics, it's basically related to the black holes. So it's a point where the mass density becomes infinite. Okay, that's why we link it to the black holes. And the concept of space and time in those points, they have no meaning. Okay, and that idea was used in the concept of technological singularity, because we are saying that at the time when machines will have surpassed the intelligence of humans, then we don't know what will happen, and progress will go infinitely fast. We cannot predict it, basically. We have no idea what will happen. So there are many definitions of technological singularity. Probably Dr. Solez mentioned the Time magazine article, and they talk about the day or the time when we become immortal, because they link it to technology in medicine progressing very fast, and then that new technology will allow us to live forever. I have encountered one definition. I forgot where it's coming from, and I like it very much. It says that singularity, it's at the point where machines and humans become one. And I like that better, because it means there's no one enemy of the other. It's not the machine against the humans or the humans against the machine. It's actually one. There's no distinction. So let's go deeper in this idea of singularity, and why do we say that we don't know what will happen beyond that point? So I'm taking the metaphor of a mouse. We all know what a mouse is. Some of us are even afraid of mice. A mouse can swim. If there is water, that mouse will adapt to the water, that flood, and it can swim to the other side. So it's not a dumb kind of animal, is it? A mouse will know where to find its food to survive. Okay? It'll come in your house if you don't have your food properly, and it'll have a feast. When it has offsprings, it will build a nest, and it'll use anything it'll find in its environment to build a comfortable nest. If it's in your garage, it may use plastic, paper, you name it. It can even chew on plastic, the electric wires to use the rubber around it to build a nest, anything. If it's in the wild, it'll find whatever is in that environment. So it's not that dumb, it's intelligent. Don't you agree? Actually, they're so smart that if you put them in a maze, and once they find their way to a reward, like some piece of cheese or whatever, they will memorize that maze. And if you ask them to go through that maze again, they will not hesitate anymore. They will go the right path. So they learn. They have the capacity to learn. And that capacity to learn is sophisticated enough that you can eventually teach a mouse to do arithmetic. So you can teach it to count 1 plus 1, 3 minus 1, and things like that. Okay? This has been demonstrated and it has been done. So it's an intelligent being. But in the world of mice, could you imagine a mouse staring at the sky and wondering, what are these lights? Are these stars? What's the distance? Are there other mice living on these possible planets? Do you think a mouse thinks like that? I doubt it. Do you think mice know about what they're eating and whether they're eating healthy or not, and whether they have had enough protein today, or did they have enough fruit today, whatever? Do they think like that? Do they have a concept of what a protein is? So since they can't see the big world, can they see the small world? Do they have an idea about the microbes and the viruses that we know of? I don't know if it's a mouse or a squirrel, had a mouse coming, or a squirrel, a rodent anyways, coming to my garage and lived inside the engine of my car that I haven't used for a while and built a nest there. Actually created a mess. I don't think that rodent had any idea what that big block was. Didn't imagine that that's an engine that will power this big box called the car with the wheels and move me from one place to the other. There's no concept. They don't understand that. It may be a big place that has many holes, and hey, gee, that insulation is very nice. You can actually remove that whole thing to build its nest. It adapted to that world without understanding it. Same thing, that mouse will not understand that big noise that is happening there. It's actually a rocket going up to space. They don't understand what that is. And even though it knows how to maybe calculate one piece of cheese and another piece of cheese, that's 2 pieces of cheese, and I have more food for the winter, basically, it may not be able to do abstractions the way we do them in mathematics and in physics. Okay. So what's my point? So we can stop for a second and think about what a mouse can think, what a mouse can imagine, or can learn, or can know. The mouse, seeing us, they have no idea what we can think They don't know that we know that there is a world bigger than our planet, and there is a world, invisible world, that is even bigger with all these microbes and even smaller. We're talking about nano scale. So we cannot compare the intelligence, even though that mouse is intelligent, we cannot compare the intelligence of that mouse with the intelligence of a human, except putting it on a scale. So I have a scale, an imaginary scale, where I can put the human intelligence as the middle, let's call it 0, and then anything that is less intelligent, we call it subintelligent, like a mouse, is minus something. But if I have a scale like that, I can imagine something bigger than 0. Okay? It's possible. And that's what we call superintelligent. Like the mouse cannot define my intelligence, at least I think it doesn't, I cannot define what superintelligence is. I can only say it's superior to mine, but I don't know what it is. I cannot describe it. Does it make sense? Okay. So our intelligence that I put 0 is actually phenomenal. We have yet to understand how that intelligence works. But it's what made us superior to all the other animals on the planet, even though we don't have big teeth, we don't have, I don't know, a thick skin, we don't have the power that many animals have, but because we are intelligent, we can build tools, we can build traps, and we can control our environment. Okay? Better, way better than other animals. It's thanks to our intelligence that we have that superiority. So, as I said, as the mouse cannot conceivably think or comprehend and at our level, I mean, it doesn't understand our level, we cannot understand the level that is superior to us. And the day a machine becomes as intelligent and then becomes more intelligent than us, we can't understand how it is thinking, if it is thinking. Hopefully it will. And we don't understand what it's capable of. And that is why it will create and do things that we cannot do as quickly or as well as they have these super intelligent machines or beings will do. I'm not using just machines, I'm using beings because, as I said in the beginning, I like the definition of singularity being that machines and humans become one. So that one, the mixture of machines and human beings will be a being. Okay? Or a pure machine, I don't know. So the technological singularity was defined, there are many definitions as I said, but if you look at Wikipedia, it's defined as the hypothetical future emergence of greater than human intelligence through technological means. And that emergence will result in an explosive superintelligence. So eventually one day we'll build a machine that either is more intelligent or will become more intelligent than us, and this machine will solve many problems that we didn't manage to solve, or maybe problems that we didn't even think about, and then will self-improve it, will do self-improvements and will evolve. Okay. So it's a recursive, rapid improvement of itself. And this fast rate makes it very difficult for us to comprehend and predict, and that's why we call it the singularity. Okay? Is it just science fiction? Some people wrote books about that. Some people thought about movies, scenarios, and so forth. Is it just science fiction, or is it reality? Well, it's not today's reality, but I can tell you it will happen eventually. And we should not just dismiss it, even though it will not, I believe it will not happen while I'm alive, but maybe my kids will see it. We should not dismiss it because we should be ready for it. There are many questions we have to ask about singularity, and we should prepare ourselves, either by planning for new rules in our society or putting some safeguards to prevent some things that we don't want them to happen, or by helping some other things to accelerate this phenomenon or whatever. But the point is that we should not dismiss it. We should start thinking about it at all different levels, not just at the technology level, but also at the level of our society as a whole, systematic. I'd like to give quotes from time to time, and this is a quote apropos that I really like by Gibson. It says, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed." And that happened many times, again and again. There are things that we see and we're mesmerized by them. Wow, that's great. But actually we realize that it's been around for some time. I'll give you an example. I was visiting Google. It was in 2009. There was a faculty summit, so they invited some faculty members and they presented us with their technology, and they wanted to see our reaction, what we say, and things like that. We had a meeting with Vint Cerf. So Vint Cerf is one of the inventors of TCP/IP. TCP/IP is the protocol that all machines use to communicate on the internet. And he's today the vice president, one of the vice presidents at Google. They call him the internet evangelist. So his role at Google is to identify new technologies that can be plugged in the internet. Okay? He told us a story about his wife. Apparently his wife is technically deaf. So just putting a hearing aid is not enough. They put a cochlear implant. You know what a cochlear implant is. So you have something here back of your ears, and it has a microphone. It hears the sounds in the environment, and there's some electrodes going in the bone, and they stimulate the nerves to make them believe to hear sounds. So the microphone basically captures these sounds, and then you reproduce them and stimulate the nerves, and then the person can hear. Well, there's something new that started last year, 2012. Well, it started early on. The issue is that when they created TCP/IP, TCP/IP are two protocols together. One of them is IP, and it deals with addressing different devices on the internet. They created addresses with 32 bits. So 32 bits to create any address, and every single machine on the internet has a unique address to be able to connect to the internet. But you have a finite number. At that time, they thought, well, it's a large number, but now we're exhausting all possible addresses, and we can't add new machines. There's some regions in the world where we can't add new addresses. We have to find some tricks to do that. So they have a new version called IPv6, and they started deploying it in the world last year, so 2012. So in 2009 at Google, they were already thinking about how to exploit that. So now we have IPv6, so IP version 6, that has 128 bits per address. That gives you a very large number of, it's almost infinite number of devices. So their idea is simple. This cochlear implant, I can give it an IP address. It's a device like any device, and now it can connect to the internet. A phone like this by Google and many other smartphones, you can talk to them. You know that. You can talk to the phone, and the phone will capture that voice and detect the words, and you can have commands like organize scheduling a meeting, or starting an email, or calling somebody, or sending an SMS. But you can also have sophisticated queries that Google now will see as a search, and it'll go automatically to Google, get the search, and you'll have on the phone the results. Well, now I can take that same technology and put it in the cochlear implant, because Google also has text to voice, text to speech, and the phone can talk back to me. So what we do is to use exactly the same technology that exists, and we put it in the cochlear implant. So the cochlear implant now today exists, by the way. You can talk to it, it gets the search query, sends it to Google, comes back with the answer, and reads it back to me. Nobody can hear it except me. Does it shock you? It exists already. Maybe it's not that fantastic, but I think it's an amazing device, and maybe I want to have one installed even though I can hear. I'm not deaf, but I'd like to install it. Well, some people may argue it's not a big deal because I can have something like the microphone that you have for the cell, and that one you can also put an IP address. I don't have to put a cochlear implant per se. But I'll give you another example that exists. You think it's science fiction, it's tomorrow, but it's already here. People who lost their sight, they can't see anymore because of the degeneration of the retina or whatever, they can regain sight. There is a device, an implant that has been created, and there are many companies working on similar devices. It's an implant you put on the retina, and the same principle as the cochlear implant. It sends signals to the optical nerve and make you believe that there are some colors, some shapes, and whatever. So now that implant on the retina connects wirelessly to two cameras on glasses. The camera sees images and sends the signal to that implant that reproduces the signal to the optical nerve, and they can see. Well, it's not as sophisticated because there are only a few pixels that they can see. The last technology I saw is about 4 by 4 pixels, so it's very small. You have a very limited number of colors. But this reminds me the early digital cameras. The early digital cameras had very bad resolution, but very quickly they improved. Now, digital cameras, you can have 20-something megapixels. Even better, they can zoom in, zoom out. So imagine now somebody who used to be blind now can read with a zoom in and zoom out. They can read a newspaper 100 meters away. It's way better than my eye. The interesting thing, that future is already here. It's not the future, it's now. But it's now for some people, it's the future for other people. So where do I stand with the Singularity? I mentioned that, so I'm a professor in computer science, but I can't predict the future, but one thing I can say is that this Singularity will happen eventually. And yeah, I'm saying it's not in the near future. Maybe. Anyways, that's my prediction. And will AI be part of this technological singularity? Definitely. It's not the only technology part of it, but AI, artificial intelligence, is an important component that will play a huge role. The problem, again, is that we don't know what AI is. We know it today. We don't know what AI is for tomorrow. AI has always been a moving target. What we called AI yesterday is not the AI today. Because each time we solve something that was AI, it's not AI anymore, it's solved. And AI moves to another target. So we call it a moving target. But AI, whatever it is today and what it'll be tomorrow, will play a huge role in the technological singularity. I'll discuss more in depth what AI is and some of the components of AI, at least for today. So is there a danger with the technological singularity? I think yes. Any technology that we invented, you can look at the history, there are good things we can do with it and there are bad things we can do with it. Depends who has it and who has control of that. So we should be ready, we should prepare ourselves so that we have the good things about it and not the bad things. So only do we need an early warning system, put some safeguards, whatever, create some regulations to prevent the bad things, you name it. There are many things we can think about. Now, as I said, the Time magazine that talked about, oh my, I have to stop quickly, talked about singularity as being the day we become immortal. So I want to talk about, this is linked to medicine, so I have to bring it up. If you look at the history about our life expectancy, indeed it has been improving dramatically. So this is a figure that I got from the internet somewhere. People collected from the 1600s different statistics about life expectancy. And you can see that, yes, it's been increasing dramatically, especially in the last few years. And you can very easily put a line there and say, well, I can predict more or less it'll follow the same trend, and I can make predictions. So if I go to 2050 and 2100, so 2100, I can see that if we continue with that trend, the life expectancy will go up to 107 years by 2100. That's phenomenal. But there are some people who argue that no, that curve will get steeper. And there are papers, that's like this paper here, that is predicting that our life expectancy will reach 125 by 2049 because the technology is accelerating the innovation in medicine, in nanotechnology, in engineering, and so forth. And all that will converge and will help us live longer. So if I go back to the life expectancy that as we know it, not as predicted by some of these researchers, I can see that the trend is consistent in many countries, not just the first one that I showed here. This is the best life expectancy in the world. But if I go by country, it's similar in many countries. By the way, Canada is one of the best in the world. But there are other researchers that argue that while the life expectancy is indeed improving, if I look at the, and for the two genders, if I look, this is a study in the UK, if I look at the healthy life expectancy, not just the life expectancy, but the healthy life expectancy, then the slope is not as steep. It stays flat. What does that mean? It means that there are many people who live longer but with a lot of diseases, and they're not really healthy, with all the chronic diseases that they will have to live with. And this is an interesting article because, well, it talks about the cost for the society and things like that. But again, there are people who argue, well, this is not necessarily true because all these chronic diseases with the singularity will find solutions and they will be eliminated, and then people will live longer indeed, but healthy. So there's still a debate. But it's something to think about. So currently, without the singularity, we are indeed extending the life expectancy, but the healthy life expectancy is actually not changing, and the longer people live, the more chronic diseases they end up having. Okay. There are some diseases that didn't exist before because we didn't reach a certain age. So can technology change this? Yes, it can. It's possible. I don't have the answer to it, but it's possible. So I think I'll stop here and I'll continue next time talking about cyborgs and the fact that our society is already infiltrated by cyborgs, and the argument that tomorrow will be actually maybe all of us will become cyborgs by choice. But I would like to give you the chance to ask questions and start a discussion. We'll continue this next time. Thank you. Ross.
I don't have a specific question about this, but while you were giving your lecture today, I was off in Wonderland, And Facebook came out with what they call Facebook search.
Yes.
And so it occurs to me that in these individual studies about AI, about medicine, about any singularity thing you can put your finger on, that they're calculating these dates as, somewhere in the future, 2045 kind of a thing. Now, do you think that that's a good estimate? Because what I'm hearing is that as AI improves, so does the pace of medicine, because then AI switches track and starts improving medicine. And as medicine improves, so does our lifespan, and on and on. But I keep hearing it from all these different lecturers as being tied to a single concept in the singularity realm, and there's not a lot of interconnection between medicine and AI. So do you think 2045 is a good estimate, or is that?
No. My answer directly is no, I don't think 2045 is a reasonable date. I think it'll be beyond the 21st century. There are many things that are required. First thing is to really understand how to build a machine that is intelligent, really intelligent. Then build a machine that reaches our intelligence and surpasses us. And then make it global. It takes time to generalize technology. As I said, sometimes you have things that have been invented yesterday, and when we see them today, we're mesmerized. We're, wow, this is amazing, this is beautiful, I want to have it. Today, we still have people in Papua New Guinea and even in Brazil living like our ancestors lived thousands of years ago. So there are two things that have to happen, well, three things. First, understanding what intelligence is and what thinking means, to program it in a machine that will eventually become more intelligent than us, and then have it not just in one copy, but enough copies of that so that it improves itself. And then I think we are still far from that. And it's not just AI, it's a convergence. It'll be at the confluence of many, many fields.
Yeah.
And those fields have to talk to each other. The specialists from these different fields have to talk to each other.
So maybe just to tie it back to the Facebook news, then do you think there are intelligences that we don't recognize as intelligences? So the network knowledge on Facebook or, in Google search queries, like, is there information out there that we as humans are already blinded by how smart it is, right? The analogy, the mouse to the man to the AI.
Yeah.
So is there maybe an intelligence already present in some of these technologies that we just don't understand and can't understand?
Well, there are many things we still don't know, and we are discovering things about ourselves every day. And 2 years ago, I was looking at a video done by MIT simulating the universe within our cell. That was incredible, and thinking about how a protein is actually carrying some load from one place to another and following a particular path, you wonder, is it simply programmed in the protein to do that, or is it a certain form of intelligence in there? We still don't know, we are guessing. So yeah, there are many things we still don't know, we're still discovering. We think we know, and that's why I said even AI is a moving target. We think we define AI one way, and as soon as we reach that and we solve it, it becomes nothing, and then we move on. I often use the example of the word processor. So we tried to simulate the typewriter, and we programmed the functions of a typewriter in a word processor, in a computer. But then suddenly we realized, hey, we can do more than just what the typewriter was doing. We can do justifying the text. We can do spell checker and all that stuff. And then people looked at that, wow, that's an intelligent program. How do you do that? But as soon as it became a common tool used by everybody, nobody thinks about, hey, gee, my spell checker, actually we criticize it and we try to improve this and that. It's not intelligent anymore. Justifying text automatically, it's not intelligent anymore. It was intelligent with regards to when you compare it with a typewriter, because we were not able to do the typewriter. But now it's not intelligent. And there are many other things, whether it is the the intelligence of my remote control for my TV. Some remote controls actually look at your behavior and adapt to you. They adapt to you. That may look intelligent. Tomorrow it's not intelligent anymore. All the remote controls will have that. So it's moving. What we think is required to reach the singularity, as soon as we reach it, we'll see that we're still far from the singularity. And that's why, while AI is moving, also the singularity will continue to move, and people, the consensus, even though many people agree on 2045, they will realize, well, it's 2145 or something like that. I'm more realistic. I think I'm realistic. I may be wrong. Maybe I'll see it if I live to 2045.
Excuse me, just one question about, you mentioned how the future is already here, but not, for everyone. Do you think that when this singularity does arrive, whenever that is, do you think it'll be global, universal, all at the same time, or is it something that, it starts at point A and then...
It'll start at point A and will be distributed, but this is an ethical question more than a technical question, because, like, for example, the people who live in the wilderness in Brazil, and they live the primitive way, they're happy. They don't want civilization to come to them because they become unhappy. Suddenly they have these needs they didn't have before. And actually, the federal government in Brazil is protecting them from this contact. The same thing will happen with singularity. Some people will not want to be in that world. It's their choice. We should not impose it on them. So it won't be evenly distributed. It'll be distributed in some places, and some people will choose not to be part of that place and move somewhere else. It'll be their jungle, their new, well, maybe we live in the jungle, and with the singularity, they'll have a different civilization. That's my view.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, guys.